Hello Druids, welcome to another episode on Echo Druid. Today we will continue to talk about one of the most incredible cases in the world of mystery. In this part of the dossier, we're going to penetrate into one of the most sensitive areas of the mystery of the faces of Belmes. From one day to the next, the more than 10,000 curious people who came to Belmes to see the faces left and never came back. However, the faces continued to appear on the floor of that house after many years of being disproven. But if the fraud had been proven, how is it possible that there are still faces in that kitchen that nobody pays attention to? But how were they disproven? And why did Belmes faces mystery end? Who was interested in ending it? Today, I have an answer for you. And as conspiratorial as it may sound, this is what has been found, and there is evidence that points to this being what happened. But then again, it's up to you, whatever you believe in. If you haven't seen the first video, please watch it. If you have, I invite you to stick with me and subscribe if you want to learn more about the world of mystery. And without further ado, let's get started. On February 25, 1972, the newspaper Pueblo came to a drastic conclusion. The mystery was over. The faces, blackened by the effect of sunlight and thanks to the silver nitrate, acted like real stone photographs. The natural development provoked all these expressions of horror. The news fell like a bucket of cold water among the believers in the mystery. Gradually, the phenomenon became a source of mockery. One more example of the raw and darkest pain. However, today it has come to light that the final solution was a huge lie. A state lie. An official deception that has lasted more than 40 years. It suggested the authorities knew perfectly well that there was no fraud. Salvador Ortega, sent by the Criminal Investigation Brigade of Seville, was the first to confirm this to the highest authorities after his on-site investigation.
Y yo dije, pues ¿qué quiere que te cuente? Si yo no sé lo que pasa allí. Allí hay unas cosas que han aparecido en el cemento y que son caras reales, que por más que se miran y más exámenes que se hacen y más lo ven expertos, no tienen solución de continuidad para decirte qué es lo que está ocurriendo, todo es negativo y aquello está allí a expensas de que vayáis a verlo cuando queráis.
Other crime reporters who were very important in the history of the Pueblo newspaper had their doubts at the time that the formula was given, but they were never able to tell it.
De pronto se decidió en las instancias del poder que aquello podía ser peligroso para los principios fundamentales del movimiento. El gobierno franquista hizo una intervención fundamental y absolutamente radical para impedir que los periodistas siguiéramos informando sobre la verdad de las caras de Belmes.
Antonio Casado, the director of the Pueblo team that gave the formula about the fraud, confesses today that this was only one line of investigation. There were others that were much more mysterious and that ruled out any human manipulation. But those never came to light. Something prevented it.
Lo que pasa es que en un momento determinado, pues a mí se me dice que aquello hay que cortarlo y echo mano, digamos, de lo que habíamos obtenido por la vía natural, por la vía de las leyes de la naturaleza más o menos conocidas, por la vía de lo científico. Se publicó y aquello fue el final de la historia.
43 years after that information that buried the enigma, Antonio Casado told the Cuarto Milenio team the other side of that news.
Es verdad que lo publicamos, que aquello eran sales de plata, incluso llegamos a decir algunos nombres. Yo nunca pude demostrar eso. Lo que pasa es que hubo un momento pues, que aquello no se podía mantener porque el estado de ánimo de la opinión pública ya era rayano fronterizo con la histeria nacional, una especie de histeria nacional que se creó.
The hidden story was very different, and the Belmes faces were the sacrificed ones.
Realmente se trata de un lamentable test del espíritu crítico de cierto sector de los españoles. Es increíble que esto pudiera convencer a nadie, pero hubo mucha gente que quedó convencida por este pseudoargumento.
In 1990, two young journalists, Lorenzo Fernandez and Iker Jimenez, began to investigate the strange way in which the case was closed. In their research, they found things as surprising as the phenomenon itself. The initial question was simple and categorical. If the fraud had been proven, how is it possible that there are still faces in that kitchen that nobody pays attention to? The lady with the cup, the lady with the horrible grimace, the teacher, the naked woman, the family, the face of fear, all of them, and more than 100 others who had already disappeared, had continued to appear on that concrete floor. Nobody visited them anymore. Nobody believed in them anymore. But they were there. They continued to show up. The two reporters learned that the mayor of the town in the 1970s, Manuel Rodriguez Rivas, was sent to Madrid in an official vehicle to appear before the Minister of the Interior, Tomás Gariano Goñi. This high official gave him precise instructions to deny the phenomenon and to stop the mass hysteria that had already formed throughout Spain. The warning operation also reached the Pueblo newspaper itself, with an explicit call to its director, Emilio Romero. This influential journalist was the one who told Antonio Casado that the story had to end immediately.
A mí me llamó el ministro de la Gobernación, que era entonces Carial Goñi, y para hacerme una entrevista, y más que para hacerme una entrevista era para meterme en la cárcel, porque creía que yo era el que había montado todo el tinglado de las caras.
Hicieron una conspiración diciendo que había sido un fraude y que estaba puesto todo el pueblo de acuerdo y con el alcalde.
According to the words of Mayor Rivas, the order to end the mystery had been launched directly by Miguel Peinado, the Bishop of Jaén. In those turbulent days of February 1972, letters arrived from different organizations and members of the movement. They asked for his immediate dismissal, his persecution. But Spain never knew all of this. The so-called Operation Trident was forged to put an end to a matter that was too much of a nuisance.
Las instancias del poder, de parte de la hija de Francisco Franco, que era el jefe del Estado, etc., existía una gran preocupación, no fuera a ser que aquello estuviera fuera de las manifestaciones religiosas o de otro tipo y que pudieran significar una preocupación que al final convirtiera aquello en una amenaza para el régimen. Por tanto, tengo que decir que cuando me encuentro que Iker investiga esta historia y descubre lo que para mí es la solución de por qué no fuimos más allá, como siempre en nuestro país. ¿Qué nos lo impidió? ¿Por qué no pudimos ver la cara oculta de la verdad? Sencillamente el poder político había decidido que nos tenía que engañar una vez más y decirnos que aquello era un fraude por decreto. Pues no lo era y no lo es. Y una y otra vez la realidad que es tozuda reverdece.
Carmen Polo, Franco's wife, had been personally interested in the mystery, and especially in the possible religious aspect of it all. She commissioned a detailed report and immediately began the operation that ended with the accusation of the faces painted with silver salts. However, something did not fit. There was a notarial act in those times that clearly showed that the solution could not be so simple. But Spain never knew that either. Antonio Palacios Luque was the illustrious notary who presented the Belmes faces when everyone thought it was a gross fraud. The protocol was rigorous and discreet, and his surprise was extraordinary.
La cocina que yo clausuré se desclausuró. Lo cierto y verdad es que entre la figura precedente y las posteriores había ido variación. Y en la segunda cocina empezaron a salir caras. Pero caras significativas. Pero lo cierto y verdad es que yo no conozco una técnica de pintura que pueda originar la figura que ya aparecía. Señores, a mí me parece que ahí no hubo manipulación.
Operation Trident to kill the Belmes faces had the expected effect. The false explanation was corroborated in democratic times. Two analyses of the Spanish National Research Council, dated in 1991 and 1995, demonstrated the non-existence of silver salts. Therefore, a whole country had been lied to.
Hicimos porque eso es necesario, hacer una muestra y poder cerciorarte de que aquello no es un fraude y que por supuesto se habló de que aquello estaba pintado, que había habido anilinas, que había habido nitrato de plata, para que tú sabes que haces el fogonazo de la fotografía y luego la imagen va saliendo. Nosotros no encontramos nada de eso.
Me fascina que el Centro Superior de Investigaciones Científicas haya sido incapaz de decir cuáles son los componentes que forman las caras de Belmes.
Well, Druids, that's all for today. But this is not the end of the Faces of Belmes. There are two more things that I think are quite relevant. These are how the Faces of Belmes have evolved, the graphic evidence of these changes, even 50 years after being disproven. And the other thing that I find most incredible is who are the faces? And we will talk about the Spanish Civil War, nameless graves, a shrine, a village, faces on the floor of a house, and a destroyed family. Join me on the next episode here on Neko Druid. Subscribe and like this video to see if you would like more content from the world of mystery. I also would invite you to leave me a comment or your theory on what's going on with the faces, because I don't know, even I can't tell what's going on with the faces. Again, thanks for watching and see you on the other side.